Marvel just revealed a character who could eventually become more dangerous than Doctor Doom, and almost nobody is talking about it. No, it's not Scarlet Witch, not Franklin Richards, not even Loki. It's Jean Grey, the first true mutant officially introduced into the MCU's Earth 616 timeline. And if Marvel follows the comics, this isn't just another X-Men hero, it's the beginning of one of the most powerful and terrifying characters Marvel has ever created. So before the Phoenix Force changes everything, let's break down who Jean Grey really is. Jean Grey wasn't born looking like a superhero. She grew up in a normal family with loving parents, Elaine and Professor John Grey, alongside her older sister Sarah. Even though Jean was born a mutant, her X gene stayed completely dormant. There were no powers, no strange abilities, nothing to suggest she was different, until one tragic day changed everything. As a child, Jean witnessed her best friend Annie die in a horrific car accident right in front of her. The trauma didn't just break her heart, it awakened the mutant inside her. Her telepathic powers activated first, allowing her to hear thoughts and mentally connect with other people. Soon after, her telekinesis began developing too, giving her the ability to move objects with nothing but her mind. And unlike most mutants, Jean possessed both abilities at the same time. That combination alone made her one of the rarest mutants on Earth. But there was one huge problem. She couldn't control any of it. Objects around her would suddenly start floating. Furniture, glass, even sharp objects became dangerous whenever she lost emotional control. Her own parents had no idea what was happening and became terrified of their daughter's uncontrollable abilities. They took her to countless psychiatrists. None of them had answers, because you can't cure the mutant gene. Eventually, someone pointed them toward a man who understood exactly what Jean was becoming, Charles Xavier. At the time, Professor X was beginning his dream of building a school for gifted mutants. When he met Jean, he instantly recognized something extraordinary. Her power wasn't just impressive, it was overwhelming. Knowing she was still too young to handle it, Xavier created a powerful mental block inside Jean's mind. As a telepath himself, he sealed away most of her true potential, allowing only a fraction of her abilities to remain active. It wasn't meant to weaken her forever. It was meant to protect both Jean and everyone around her. From that point on, Xavier became her mentor, teaching her how to slowly control her telepathy and telekinesis while keeping her immense power locked away. As Jean grew older, it became clear that occasional training wasn't enough. Her powers kept pushing against Xavier's mental barriers, so Professor X convinced her parents to let her attend his newly established school for gifted youngsters, where mutants could finally learn to control abilities that normal society would never understand. Jean quickly became far more than just another student. She became Professor X's closest protege. Using her telepathic gifts, she didn't just improve herself, she helped calm frightened young mutants, guided students struggling with their own powers, and became one of Xavier's most trusted allies inside the school. Meanwhile, fear of mutants was spreading across the world. Humans viewed them as dangerous, unnatural, even monsters. Professor X believed the only way to change that was to show humanity that mutants could be heroes. So he formed the very first X-Men, and Jean Grey stood among its founding members. Her original code name wasn't Phoenix. It wasn't even Jean Grey. She fought under the name Marvel Girl. Alongside Cyclops, Beast, Iceman, and the original founding team, she became one of the first faces of Xavier's dream. But despite her unbelievable potential, Jean still wasn't a frontline fighter, because Xavier's mental block continued suppressing most of her true power. She mainly supported the team with telepathy and limited telekinesis, while avoiding direct combat whenever possible. No one, not even Jean herself, had any idea what she was truly capable of. Jean spent years believing she had finally mastered her powers, but the truth was, she had never been using her full strength. Professor X's psychic block was still holding back the most dangerous mutant mind on Earth, and eventually, that wall began to crack. During one rescue mission, Jean watched an out-of-control ambulance race toward innocent civilians. The moment instantly reminded her of the childhood accident that killed her best friend. This time, she refused to lose someone again. Her emotions shattered Xavier's mental barriers, and for the first time, Jean unleashed her abilities without restraint. She stopped the ambulance with pure telekinesis, saved countless lives, and instantly became a public hero. More importantly, she finally believed in herself. From that day forward, Jean fully embraced her place within the X-Men and evolved from a support member into one of the team's strongest pillars. But here's what makes Jean truly terrifying. Even without the Phoenix Force, Jean Grey is already classified as an Omega-Level Mutant. That's the highest natural mutant classification in Marvel. Omega-Level mutants possess abilities with virtually no measurable upper limit. They aren't just dangerous to cities, they have the potential to affect the entire world. Jean's telepathy alone is powerful enough to eventually reach every mind on Earth if she fully develops it, and that's before adding anything else. Many fans think the Phoenix Force is Jean's mutant power. It isn't. The Phoenix Force is a completely separate cosmic entity, one of the oldest and most powerful forces in the Marvel Universe. Jean was born an Omega-Level mutant on her own. The Phoenix simply recognized her incredible potential and eventually chose her as one of its greatest hosts. In other words, Jean was already extraordinary. The Phoenix only amplified what was already there. Once bonded together, everything changes. Normal Jean Grey is already a global-level powerhouse. Jean with the Phoenix Force becomes a universal-level threat. Her destructive potential jumps to an entirely different scale. And when emotional trauma begins corrupting that cosmic power, the Dark Phoenix is born. Dark Phoenix isn't a different entity. It's the same Phoenix Force being twisted by Jean's emotional pain, fear, guilt, and trauma. That's why Dark Phoenix is so terrifying. You're not fighting a monster. You're fighting limitless cosmic power controlled by a broken mind. Even before becoming Phoenix, Jean's raw abilities are almost unmatched. Her telepathy is considered Omega level, and many modern comics now treat her telekinesis as Omega level 2. That's why Marvel has always portrayed Jean as one of the strongest mutants ever created. The Phoenix didn't make Jean powerful. It made someone who was already unstoppable, almost impossible to defeat. Now let's talk about the reason Jean Grey is feared even by the strongest heroes. Her powers aren't just strong, they're almost unfair. Let's start with telepathy. Jean doesn't simply read minds. She can communicate mentally with anyone, anywhere, without speaking a single word. She can scan thoughts, uncover hidden memories, sense emotions, and even take complete control of another person's mind. And in the comics, that range isn't limited to a room or a city. At her peak, Jean can influence minds on a global scale. She can also make herself effectively invisible, not physically, but mentally. She can erase herself from someone's perception so they don't even realize she's standing right in front of them. Because Jean is one of Marvel's greatest telepaths, she's also incredibly resistant to psychic attacks. She constantly maintains powerful mental defenses, making it nearly impossible for other telepaths to invade or control her mind. And if that wasn't enough, she can rewrite memories. Jean can erase memories, restore forgotten ones, implant entirely new experiences, or alter someone's perception of reality. In theory, she could make the entire world remember Peter Parker's identity again, or convince someone they've lived an entirely different life. That's how dangerous her mind really is. Her telepathy also allows her to weaponize the human brain. She can overwhelm enemies with unbearable mental trauma, trap them inside psychic illusions, mentally paralyze them, or even push someone into a coma without ever touching them. She can also link multiple minds together, creating a psychic network where entire teams communicate instantly without saying a single word. It's basically a living telepathic conference call. Then there's telekinesis. Jean doesn't just lift objects. She can move massive structures, stop speeding vehicles, crush enemies with invisible force, and manipulate countless objects simultaneously with incredible precision. She can also surround herself with nearly impenetrable telekinetic barriers, capable of blocking powerful attacks before they ever reach her. And yes, flight comes naturally. Jean can levitate and travel through the air using nothing but telekinetic force. Some comic stories push her abilities even further. She has demonstrated psychic projection, sending her consciousness beyond her physical body, similar to astral projection, despite not relying on traditional magic. While Marvel doesn't explore this ability often, it proves just how far her psychic powers can evolve. Now add the Phoenix Force. Everything you've heard so far becomes only the beginning. With the Phoenix, Jean gains reality-altering levels of cosmic power. She can manipulate unimaginable amounts of energy, control cosmic fire, reshape matter, travel across space at incredible speeds, and even perform feats that approach reality manipulation itself. Her telekinetic abilities become vastly stronger, and the Phoenix allows her to cross interstellar distances with ease. One of the Phoenix's most terrifying gifts is resurrection. Killing Jean Grey doesn't always mean she's gone. As long as the Phoenix remains connected to her, it can resurrect her again and again. That's why death has never truly been permanent for Jean in Marvel Comics. The Phoenix also lets her absorb energy, including life force itself. In the right circumstances, Jean could drain an opponent's energy completely, reducing even incredibly powerful beings to nothing. It's the kind of power that makes Infinity Stones feel unnecessary against ordinary enemies. By this point, Jean Grey isn't just another mutant, she's one of the most powerful beings Marvel has ever created. For all her godlike power, Jean Grey isn't invincible. In fact, her greatest weaknesses have nothing to do with strength. They come from her own mind. Let's start with combat. Jean has never been known as a hand-to-hand fighter. Unlike Black Widow, Elektra, or other highly trained warriors, Jean depends almost entirely on her psychic abilities. Take those powers away, and physically she's far easier to defeat than most major Marvel heroes. That's exactly why the mutant suppression collar is so dangerous. Like every mutant, Jean's X gene can be temporarily shut down by this device. Once her mutant abilities are suppressed, she loses access to both her telepathy and telekinesis, leaving her as vulnerable as an ordinary human. Even the Phoenix Force doesn't automatically remove that limitation if her mutant powers are completely blocked. But Jean's biggest weakness isn't technology, it's emotion. The trauma of watching her childhood friend die never truly left her. That pain shaped her entire life. It made her compassionate, but it also made her emotionally unstable. Fear, guilt, grief, and self-doubt constantly affect the way she uses her powers. Instead of pushing herself to her true limits, Jean often holds back because she's terrified of hurting innocent people. That emotional restraint becomes one of the defining parts of her character. It's also the reason Dark Phoenix exists. The Phoenix Force isn't evil. Jean's emotional scars corrupt it. When her pain takes control, limitless cosmic power transforms into one of the most destructive forces in Marvel history. In other words, Jean doesn't lose because she's weak. She loses because she's human. Professor X's psychic blocks, her childhood trauma, her fear of losing control, and the guilt of hurting others. All of those things prevent Jean from ever reaching her absolute potential for long. Many comic stories show only fragments of what she's truly capable of, because if Jean Grey ever fought without emotional limits, very few characters in Marvel could stop her. Now that the MCU has officially introduced Jean Grey into Earth 616, this changes everything. She's not just another mutant joining the roster. She's a future cornerstone of the X-Men, an Omega-Level Mutant, a potential Phoenix host, and eventually, one of the greatest threats or greatest heroes the MCU has ever seen. Whether Marvel builds toward the Phoenix Saga immediately or saves it for years down the road, one thing is already clear. Jean Grey isn't just important, she's a game changer. So next time you hear someone say she's just another X-Men character, you'll know exactly why that's completely wrong. If you're excited to see Jean Grey's future in the MCU, hit that like button, subscribe for more Marvel deep dives, and let me know in the comments, who do you think could actually stop a full-power Jean Grey?